Genesis 12 is a really cool story simply because it's the first time God talks to somebody after the flood directly. And he calls to Abram and he's like, go and your people and your father's household to the land I'll show you. And he shows you, and I'll make your name great, and you will be a blessing, and I'll bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Now, a lot of Christians say that this is like a forthcoming, or like an Old Testament preview of Jesus. So maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But then they go, and then he took his wife and his nephew, all the possessions, and then they go there and they see Canaanites in the land. And the Lord said, I'll give your offspring this land. And then he built an altar to the Lord. And then he went to Bethel and pitched his tent. And then Abram sent out and continued and went to Egypt, where it gets weird. So like verses 1 through 9, I like God's like, yeah, I'm gonna bless you, curse the people who cursed you. Super good for like basically an origin myth of like where the nation comes from, where the Israelites come from, things of that nature. I think that's a really cool story. What I don't like is the rest of the chapter. So when we get into Genesis 12, we have Abram called in Egypt, or goes to Egypt. Um, there's a famine. Abram goes to Egypt because the famine was severe. Um, and then he wants the Egyptians to think that Sarai is his sister and not his wife. And then Pharaoh sees her. But then the Lord inflicted diseases on Pharaoh and his household because of it. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. Why did you say she's my sister? Take her and go. Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way and his wife and everything they had. So they get stuff, and it's like this whole thing. And it's like Abram, I feel like, did something that's not great. He says his wife is his sister, and then his wife is married to the Pharaoh. Now, is that not, in a sense, adultery? Which would be why the Pharaoh is punishing Pharaoh for basically taking someone else's wife. But realistically, Abram was the one who committed adultery here by. Actually, I don't think it was technically adultery. I think it was technically prostitution. Complicated, but this is just a really weird one because why is Abram doing this? He's afraid that he'll be killed so that people can marry his wife. So instead of that, he saves his own life by having his wife married off, and then God intervenes, which makes sense. You kind of need God to intervene in this one because Abram can't really kill Pharaoh, and Abram can't inflict serious diseases on Pharaoh and all of that. So I get why that happens, but it goes from this really nice chapter where it's like, yeah, God's like, hey, Abram, I'll make your family super important and I'll bless the whole world through you too. I'm gonna give my wife to the Pharaoh so I don't die. And it's like, what? What are you doing? And Sarai didn't like. Did Sarai went along with it because obviously that was the cultural way of things back then. As a woman, you went along with what your husband said. That was just the cultural way of a lot of cultures back then. You did it, it was fine. Remember, what I want everybody to remember is the past is a foreign country. So if you're American, like United Statesian, and you look and you're like, that stuff they do over in Portugal is weird. You should look at the past in the same way. It's a different culture. And just remember to respect that culture, but you don't have to be of that culture. You don't have to follow that culture. But I still think that like no culture should do that. Like that being in one of your founding myths in the first 12 chapters of your holy book makes me concerned about what might happen in the future. And this is one of the verses where often pastors or chapters where often pastors will talk about the first 9, 10 verses, and then they'll talk about how Pharaoh blessed Abram, and they won't talk about what the Lord did to Pharaoh. Yes, Pharaoh did bless Abram with like slaves and horses and camels and sheep and all sorts of stuff, but that comes later and sent him on his way. So Abram's, getting ready, and they don't have kids yet. One thing that's very important in the Bible is when people have kids and they're important, it will tell you. That is an important thing in the Bible because if they haven't told you, the kids don't exist yet. So like Adam, Eve, then you have Cain, Abel, then Cain kills Abel, then Adam has Seth and others. But Cain, Abel, and Seth are the only important ones. Whereas here, there's no kids yet. And then eventually we'll get Ishmael, who's the father of basically the Arabs, and Isaac, who's the father of the Israelites, which is interesting because they're already Semites, because they are sons of Shem. Abram is Shem's line. So that's kind of interesting to see how the genealogies work out in the Bible. There's charts about this, but like I'm not looking at the charts right now, so I'm just thinking about it as I go through. But yeah, I don't like the end of Genesis 12.